Hi, I'm here again with James Austin at the AEC Bar, and we're going to talk a bit more about, one of the probably biggest features, I think, in the Revit and Navisworks portfolio we've had for quite a while, which is the coordination model, which you can now get into Revit. James, do you want to talk a little bit more about, why we think this is important?
Yeah, so, a lot of people invest a lot of time and effort in Navisworks, finding clashes, organising those clashes, and trying to resolve them and so on. One of the things that the coordination model does is kind of really tips that model on its head and says, well, actually, what if you lived in a world where we could avoid having those clashes in the first place? So kind of one of the things that I've always found this quite ironic is we're trying to sort of push ourselves out of business, I guess, with it, because the really cool thing is with the coordination view and the coordination model feature in Revit, you can now bring the context of that federated as designed model information. So you've got all the stuff that you're doing in Navisworks anyway, bringing the models together, creating that federated single source of truth. That can now then be brought back into the design environment for that continuous feedback loop, so that teams now, as well as being able to bring in those massive models and use it for context, can actually get into the workflows that are really important, I think, around clash avoidance, which is kind of the holy grail we're tracking towards now, where we can say, here is a project and you are going to be working in there, and it's a moving thing.
Yeah.
Design teams are constantly evolving. There are challenges on cost, on time, on schedule, as well as aesthetics and clients, and let's not get into all of that. But.
Yeah, and I think if you saw our video with Paul Walker, a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that we talked about was this idea of spell checking and proofreading. But that's this idea of finding a clash once it's already not working, and I think where we kind of see customers using the underlay model within AutoCAD, it kind of changes the way in which people do clash detection.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is people are going from having these XREF files and having maybe 20 or 30 XREF files that are all from varying dates that could be 3-4 weeks old, months old, and then designing in clashes they don't realise. Instead, we're able to use that week's federated model. When we start talking about BIM 360 Glue and Navisworks workflows, then it goes from last week to days, even that days. You've got some great tools in Navisworks like the batch utility to allow you to automate getting some of these NWDs out. So this can be the kind of the underlay. But maybe kind of talk about some of the workflows which this enables. So let's say you're, for example, you've had your MEP model come through and you're the architect.
So and I would just sort of pick up on that last point you made as well. I think when you add the sort of the more advanced workflow of the connected BIM 360 project, you've got those guys connecting Glue and the BIM 360 side of things to that Navisworks experience, which is kind of our idea of that being a real partner play. You've got those guys riffing on coordination all the time, constantly. That federated model then becomes the basis for that MEP consultant to work to. So that architect then can bring all of that federated data in. So you might have the subcontractors starting to bring in their structural steel work and so on. And then the advanced MEP design starts to filter down, and then when that federated stuff can start to feed back into the architectural model, then you can work in the context of that. So when you're starting to kind of get into that detailed design, like I used to be an architect, and the design evolves. You tend to work from the outside in. You fix your envelope, and then you'll get the detail into those spaces with the internal walls and so on. As you're working through those packages and building out the detail of the construction model, having that context is kind of invaluable. You can start to plan things out. Like we used to use clash detection to find the penetrations in walls to figure out the number of fire stops. Now you can start to say, well, actually, let's not even worry about that being a clash. We can actually just see that in context, model those in, put the fire dampers in, those kind of things. So those workflows where you can kind of go through the entire workflow from end to end and be efficient, you're removing then the process of someone having to set those clashes up, find those clashes, report them, send them back to someone who then has, what I mean? It's just, it sort of changes things fundamentally, I think.
And I think it will mean that you might want to revisit some of your processes. These are processes we've largely seen, static for 10 years, because they're evolved on this proofreading idea. You hand load of files to someone, and then you check them, and then you report all the problems back. And really, I think this is potentially a really big game changer in not only how you do clash detection, but how you avoid getting those clashes in the first place. So what we'll do is we'll probably close that video there, but if you have any questions about this, if you want to email using the email address below, so v.aec.bar@autodesk.com, we'll get James to answer any future questions you've got. But
sure.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.